Hi! Welcome to this part of my review featuring postcards from Avalidad. If you haven't seen the other parts of my review featuring this tech-noir sci-fi setting, please check out the playlist in the description below. This time we are going to take a look at crime in Avalidad and the society in general as well. Let's start taking a look at a few of the criminal organizations in Avalidad. They come with all sorts of details, the stats for different non-player characters belonging to such organizations, and you also have adventure seats. First we have the Blade Runners, a gang formed by young Moroccan boys, most of them teenagers, some preteens and even a few children, who survive by smuggling medical supplies and electronic parts to doctors and researchers working for black labs and clinics in the underworld. The Blade Runners either steal the supplies from corporate workers in the City of Glass, or are given the items as payment for sexual favors. Prostitution is the most common way of gaining access to supplies, as long as ZoneSec and other private corporate security are looking for young local thieves. Then we have the Drugstore Cowboys. They are a group of drug traffickers and addicts who wander across town, robbing pharmacies and clinics to get their hands on rarely found drugs. Lately, they have become more ambitious and planned the theft of a formula. They were able to enter a minor Leary lab and stole a recipe for a designer drug that had been dismissed as dangerous. They called it Dark Dancer and have been selling it to ravers in town. We also have the Dragon's organization. The Dragon and his people usually operate in Avalidad exclusively, but he occasionally travels to Japan and China. Any other activities are entirely unknown. His identity is hidden, and all data about his person is entirely secure and untraceable. He has vast assets though, bank accounts, shares in various sorts of business, and several corporations as well. Now let's talk about the society in Avalidad. Even if Avalidad's motto is everything is permitted, some of what's allowed is still frowned upon. It is a multicultural city, financed by Japanese investors, initially populated by Asian, North American and European scientists, researchers and bureaucrats, maintained by local workers. The cultures blended, but there are still clashes, as was the case with technology. Drugs are tolerated in the city, tolerated being the key word. The way drug abuse is seen depends a lot on whose opinion and which drug you are talking about. Executives rely heavily on stimulants and enhancement drugs for their work. They accept that as a natural part of their lives, the same way as smoking cigarettes. While on the street level, things are a bit different. Every kind of drug is being used, and there is no real law. ZoneSec usually turns a blind eye to certain types of crime. When it comes to gender and sexuality, it's a mixed bag. In some cases, they accept the gender fluidity. In other cases, there are factions that will not accept this. When it comes to religion and race, there are clashes sometimes. Because it is a multicultural environment, in some cases people work together, in other cases there are noticeable conflicts. Concerning body alterations, it depends. Cybertech, for example, is considered to be in awful taste. It is ugly and too obvious. But biotech is much more discreet, elegant, and as long as it remains unseen, it will be tolerated. So, if you are too obvious in your modifications, that won't be seen in a positive light. But if you keep things at chemical level, and as long as it's not too obvious, too noticeable, then you will have no trouble at all. In general, there are no actual psionic powers in Avalidad, but considering there are demonic entities, different substances and experiments that can modify the minds of people, then it is not out of the question if you want to insert or use psionic powers in your campaigns in Avalidad. It is viable, there is a good excuse for it. Perhaps your powers were somehow bioengineered into you, or maybe it's the result of those interactions with other entities. And remember, because Postcards from Avalidad is a system agnostic or system universal setting, even if you are using a D20 system or Savage Worlds, GURPS, Fate, etc., you have many different psionic abilities and powers included in this setting book, so that you can make the necessary tweaks or modifications. Surely you will find some psionic powers that are already contained in your RPG system of choice. When it comes to future noir fashion, Avalidad's fashion would be, to the eyes of a 2020s wokes, called a hellish landscape of cultural appropriation. There are many different fashion tendencies that mix and match, creating a unique tapestry. Sometimes things look casual, other times they are pretty extravagant. Concerning languages, you can handle things however you like. Maybe you want to handle it as a sort of city-speak situation, where people talk a mishmash of Japanese, Spanish, and German. But maybe there are different dialects within the city, and people have learned to understand and speak different tidbits of those languages, and so communication is not a problem. When it comes to law enforcement, it depends on the part of the city that you are moving through. Some places are strictly controlled, and in other places, usually you can go out into the street packing heavy firepower, but usually those places are very dangerous. And finally, when it comes to transportation, Avalidad is a big city, but there's plenty of space around it to expand and no need for people to live packed or underground. There's also a lot of parking space, though not everybody wants or can buy a car. The commuters either use their own electric vehicles or they travel by train, from the suburbs or tram inside the city proper. And this concludes this part of the review. In the next part, we are going to talk about media and entertainment. This is a vast city. There are so many adventure seats, non-player characters, excuses for the player characters and non-player characters to get into and out of trouble, so there is no end to the campaigns that you can play within this setting. Thank you for watching this part of the review. If you have any comments or questions, please let me know. And thank you so much to those of you that have been supporting the channel by sending right through RPG gift certificates. If anyone else wants to further support the channel, the information on how to do that will be in the description below. Once again, thank you, and see you later.